He was neither a king nor a general, but America followed the path he paved. Part 1. The Trailblazer. In the endless forests of the 18th century American East, where fogs blanketed the valleys and wolves howled in the distance, there was a name that rang like an echo of freedom: Daniel Boone. He was not born to live peacefully in the city. Since he was a boy, Daniel was fascinated by the woods. In his eyes, every hill, every stream seemed to have a soul. When others were afraid of the dark, Daniel loved to listen to the rustling of leaves, the sound of deer stomping on the forest floor. It was the wilderness that taught him how to survive, how to track wild animals, how to read the small signs that only those who truly loved nature could recognize. Daniel grew up in the time when America was still a wilderness, where people had to fight every day to win life. He was not just a hunter, but a pioneer, the one who paved the way for future generations to enter new lands. In the deep forests and mountains, he became a symbol of the frontier spirit, the spirit of exploration that is not afraid of danger, always moving forward. It is said that every time Daniel Boone entered the forest, the trees seemed silent, as if watching a traveler who understood them better than anyone else. With a long gun on his shoulder and a determined gaze, he became an image of freedom, of the desire to conquer uncharted lands. However, behind that strong appearance was a lonely soul. Boone understood that the path he chose had no easy glory, only cold wind, hunger, and relentless steps. But perhaps that was what made the legend of Daniel Boone, the man who went further than anyone else, just to find a place that could be called the Promised Land. Part 2. Journey into the Kentucky Wild. In the 1760s, the eastern United States was still a vast and mysterious frontier. Beyond the Appalachian Mountains, people said there was a land of plenty, Kentucky, where prairies stretched like seas, where wild game was so plentiful that you could have dinner at the touch of a bow. But the road to get there was not simple. The forests were dense, the rivers were fierce, and the native tribes always considered the land sacred, ready to fight to protect it. Daniel Boone, by then an experienced hunter, heard stories of Kentucky and felt his heart stirring. He could not resist the call of the unnamed land. With his tick-licker gun and a few trusted friends, Boone set out on a journey into the unknown. It was a journey that lasted months. By day, they trekked through dense forests, wading through deep, cold rivers. By night, they slept under the trees, listening to the hoots and howls of wind. Boone always led the way, his eyes scanning every trace on the ground: a broken branch, a fresh deer print, the faint smoke from a distant fire. Every detail could be a sign of life or danger. Many times, Boone's group was ambushed by Native Americans. They didn't want to fight, but the jungle was no place for weakness. Boone learned to read the sky, to listen to the sound of streams to determine direction, to light fires without revealing smoke. Every step was a battle between man and nature, and Boone never backed down. Finally, after countless days of trekking through the mountains, they reached the Kentucky Valley. Before them opened a scene beyond description: green pastures, scurrying deer, clear streams reflecting the afternoon sun. Daniel Boone stood still, his eyes staring into the distance. He knew this was the land he had been searching for all his life, a land of freedom, where people could live in the wild without being bound. From that moment on, Kentucky was not just a place on a map, but a symbol of the American dream, a dream of freedom, exploration, and the desire to reach new horizons. Part 3. Facing Danger and the First Losses. After exploring the rich land of Kentucky, Daniel Boone returned with stories of a new land, which excited many people. But Boone knew better than anyone that paradise was not for the faint of heart. When pioneers began to migrate to Kentucky, the deep forest was no longer just a place for wild animals, but a place where bloody conflicts could potentially take place. The native tribes considered it sacred land, where their ancestors had lived and hunted for hundreds of years. The appearance of white men carrying guns and axes to clear the forest made the relationship tense. Boone, a lover of nature and a respecter of life, did not want war. He often tried to talk, even share food with them, but he could not stop the tide of history. One autumn morning, when the mist still covered the hills of Kentucky, Boone and his hunting party were ambushed. Gunfire echoed through the forest. Many of his men fell. Boone was taken prisoner and led through the forests he had explored. During his captivity, Boone did not resist. He listened, learned their language and customs, and some of the tribe began to respect him. Some say that because of his intelligence and courage, he was accepted as an honorary brother, but Boone knew he could not stay. Freedom was in his blood. One night, he escaped and traveled hundreds of miles back through the jungle. When he reached the pioneer settlement, everything was in ruins. His wife and children thought he was dead, gone. Boone stood in the smoke, staring at the empty house, his heart filled with grief. He had lost everything: family, friends, and the belief that he could keep peace between the two worlds. But instead of falling, Daniel Boone walked. He understood that his journey was not just about finding new land, but about finding the meaning of freedom, even if it cost him blood and loneliness. From then on, Boone became a living legend, a man who never stopped, no matter how deep the forest or fate tested him. Part 4. Hero of the Frontier. After escaping months of capture and loss, Daniel Boone did not break. Instead, a new fire burned within him, the fire of a pioneer who refused to yield to fate. He returned to Kentucky, not just as a hunter, but as a guide for a generation seeking freedom. Boone and other pioneers built a settlement on the banks of the Kentucky River, Boonesborough. It was a small log fort, surrounded by a high fence, in the middle of the wilderness. During the day, they felled trees, built houses, and planted corn. At night, they took turns keeping watch, for the warning drums and howls from the woods never ceased. Life on the frontier was dangerous, but for Boone, it was real life. When attacks from hostile tribes broke out, Boone never hid behind the fence. He was always the first to rush out, rifle in hand, eyes as sharp as knives. Once, when a group of women washing clothes by the river were kidnapped, Boone chased the enemy for days, over mountains and through forests, until he brought them back to safety. That action made him a hero in the eyes of the frontiersmen, a symbol of bravery. But for Boone, a hero was not the best with a gun, but the one who stood firm when everything fell apart. He once said, "Freedom has no smooth road. It is a forest, and every step is a blow of the axe." In 1778, Boonesborough was besieged for weeks. Ammunition, food, and water were running out. Boone was wounded, but he did not leave his post. He stood on the wooden wall, watching the deep forest beyond, where smoke rose and drums echoed. In a low but determined voice, he told the people in the fort, "If we leave this place, there will be no one to pave the way for the future." When the last reinforcements arrived, Boonesborough still stood, not just by guns, but by the will of men who believed in freedom. Daniel Boone's name spread throughout the colonies, passed down in songs, stories, and poems. From a wandering hunter, Boone became a symbol of the new America, a man who dared to go first, who endured, and who sacrificed to pave the way for future generations. Part 5. The Last Years and an Immortal Legacy. In his old age, Daniel Boone left Kentucky, the land he had once shed blood to protect, to live on the banks of the Missouri River, where the frontier was opening to the west. He had no wealth, no political fame, only a small log cabin, a shotgun, and a habit of sitting and looking at the horizon every afternoon. It is said that many nights Boone would go to the edge of the forest, looking into the darkness as if listening to the howling of wolves, the rustling of the wind through the trees, sounds that had been the rhythm of his life. He said, "While I am alive, I only want land to walk on and the sky to look up at." Boone died in 1820 at the age of 85, a rare figure in that era. Before he died, he told his children and grandchildren not to need a large grave, just a mound of earth in the woods where I once hunted deer and watched the first sunrise. Yet people did not forget him. The name Daniel Boone was given to towns, streets, schools, and even mountains. In the American mind, he was not only a pioneer, but also a symbol of the desire for freedom, for adventure, for discovery. The image of him with a deerskin hat and a long gun became a symbol of the frontier spirit, the spirit of the frontier, the spirit of daring to step into the unknown. A writer once wrote, "If America is a song of pioneers, then Daniel Boone is the first note in that epic." And so, when the sun sets in the Missouri woods, people still tell the story of him, the man who lived his whole life for freedom, then melted into the land he loved like his own flesh and blood.